So you know how electric cars are definitely quick and definitely capable to go around a racetrack, as proven by our recent MG4 X-Power video at Rockingham, but they are getting a bit lardy. Well, there's a brand with a solution to that, and it is Caterham with this, the Project V, which weighs less than a 3-door petrol Mini Cooper.
Yes, we're getting up close and personal with Caterham's 4-bodied sports car before it reaches roads in at least 2 years. With a sub 1.2 tonne curb weight and space in the back for passengers, it promises to be both lighter and more practical than Porsche's future electric Cayman. It therefore stands out as a unique proposition in the world of sports cars for more than just those pretty looks.
So to kick things off, I'm going to ask someone about this car who knows it very well, and this is Jannerelly, the chief designer at Caterham Cars. And I have to ask, before we talk about the details, what is behind Project V? Can you tell us, what does V stand for?
The V, it's because it will be the first electric car from Caterham. And so the V, it's for like volt and veloce, like speed, in some different, in Latin or in Italian. So there's something linked to the electrification, basically.
Nice, okay. Well, I mean, it certainly looks like a fast car, and we know it's electric. But I wanted to talk first about the thing that's your expertise, which is the design. Now, it is beautiful, I think we can all agree. But the design itself has some influences, including from your own past. I mean, Jannerelly design, I can see flavors of that in the front of the car.
Yeah, I think it's natural for a designer to have like his own signature in some sort, and I guess you can't escape from it. But the principle was really like to make things very simple. And if you think about it, in the past they were making things simple. They were trying to find the most logical solution to create a shape, and that's why part of the car has this retro feel, I would say. But at the same time, it's anchored in the 21st century. Like if you look at the car, you see that all the bottom area of the car is kind of very sharp and edgy, and some kind of robotic aspect, feel. And that's this mix, this blend of two worlds, basically, I always like to bring.
Yeah, and I suppose that also emphasizes how the technology is underneath the car, and you've got this beauty on top. But before we talk about the specs and obviously the performance that this thing can do, we were talking earlier about the line of the car and the roof line, and obviously there's a real mid-engined feel to this platform or to the design, but of course you've also got a seat in the back of the car. So could you just talk us through that roof line there? I mean, it's quite different, isn't it, to a lot of other cars?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, basically, is that, Caterham stands for simplicity. And so, I wanted a very straightforward approach for the car. So, for instance, the link with the 7 is that the 7 is form follows function. So let's try to apply this to this GT coupe architecture. And basically what you have is like 4 wheels, and you have to accommodate people, and you have to accommodate the technology inside. So the technology, it's about the battery rack. You want to position the battery in the center. It's for the center of gravity and the handling of the car. So you have the wheelbase, the battery, and then you have to place the occupants, and most of the time you place them in the center as well. And it creates this very balanced and, as you said, like mid-engine feel. But the great thing about having an electric car is that rather than having the engine at the back behind the seat, then you have basically an empty space. So for the same silhouette, you can create an extra row of seats, like some space at the back. And I think that's what's great about this car, is that it really takes advantage of the fact that it's as an electric platform. So we can create like a short package with enough space inside, and it can become this kind of everyday sports car in some sort. And the story with the curve, with this very simple approach, is that you take the 4 wheels, you just want to drape softly, around the wheels, and you end up with this shape. And same principle, you position the passenger in the middle, and the top of the roof line is exactly where your head is. Yeah. Everything is logical about the car, and that's what makes it in some sort original now.
Yeah, and it works really well, even from a purely aesthetic point of view. And the interesting thing I see on this first illustration of the car, it's just got one seat in the back, but you can have 2 seats in the back as well. So you're really taking advantage of that electric platform. The performance as well is it feels like you're not chasing the biggest numbers, and I guess that's deliberate, right? It's got a relatively small battery, but it's split up, I think, in 2 parts. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a 55 kilowatt hour battery, but again, it's linked to the fact that the car will be very light. So it's this perfect circle where, making a lighter car, you need less battery, and etc., etc. And obviously, when you think of a sports car, you think of a very low roof. And the disadvantage today of the battery rack is that, if you put the battery rack, then the passenger above, you end up with this kind of SUV silhouette. So it's something we definitely didn't want. So the battery rack will be split between 2 areas, so behind the rear bench and under your footwell. And again, for a sports car, it works perfectly because it's nice also to have your leg very flat, and it has this sporty feel. And someone also told me it reminds them of the 7. Actually, the sitting position could be close to the 7, so it's another link.
Yeah. That's really cool. I love having that seating position. There's just a connection with the car, isn't there? I mean, it works for Formula One drivers and it does work in many sports cars, but a lot of people don't get it right. So it's good to hear that you're using not only the freedom you have with the battery, but a bit of your history with Caterham 7, of course. So we've just come around to the back of the car because I just wanted to show you in more detail this rear section, but also how it links to that lower part of the car that you mentioned, Anthony. So firstly, there's a big boot here and it fits golf clubs in it, right?
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
Sports car test done, I think, there. And as you mentioned, there's no powertrain that sort of interferes with that, so it's a big boot. But I really wanted to talk about the way the bodywork is so separate from that bottom of the car that you mentioned. So is this aero down here, basically?
Yeah, as I explained, like basically the whole bottom of the car, I wanted to show the functionality, and this car has to flow through air. So we can see that there will be a big diffuser just to be efficient in terms of airflow. And the fact that, again, it's electric, there's no gearbox, no muffler or whatever, so we are quite free to do whatever we want with the aero.
Yeah.
So again, it's a great approach.
Yeah, it looks good too. Now, as for the numbers, the interesting thing is this car doesn't go for the big numbers that some EV makers are. Some brands are doing 1,000 Newton meters of torque, and that's crazy. But this is a much more familiar power output. I mean, we've got 272 horsepower, and it will do 62 miles per hour in 4.5 seconds. So it feels like a traditional sports car. What was the reason for that? You could have presumably gone for bigger numbers.
Yeah, but again, what I like with Caterham is that they stick to their philosophy. So, it's simplicity, lightness, and fun to drive. Like the 7 is fun to drive, so we had to make this car fun, And that's the key thing. Like, fun doesn't mean it has to be more powerful or accelerate faster. It's about the emotion you have behind the steering wheel. And we know that, lightness is key for that, Like, the connection with the car, it's all about the fact that the car is light. And that's why we are really focused on this. And then it's just a consequence. You just need enough power to have the thrill. And then again, the fact that this car shouldn't be too expensive, it shouldn't be too heavy. So that's a perfect balance. And when you look at the existing cars on the market, the most fun to drive cars has this power to weight ratio.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And of course, as you mentioned, with an anticipated starting price of just over £80,000, this is not that far above some hot hatches now. I mean, you can buy hot hatches from some brands, Mercedes-AMG, for example, that are close to that, if not over, when you spec a few boxes. So this feels really competitively priced if it can do what we're hoping. And also the range is respectable, I guess, because of the lightness as well. It's over 250 miles you're hoping to achieve, and that's bang on what most brands now are sort of achieving. But this is a sports car.
And again, I mean, we started to do some quick aerodynamic study, and the frontal area of the car, it's very small actually compared to a big SUV. So that's why the efficiency comes from the fact that the car is small and low, and again, it makes perfect sense for an electric car, you know.
Yeah. Now I've spotted you've got some nice big AP Racing calipers on there, so there's a lot of stuff that traditional petrol heads can get on board with. Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tyres, and the rear track is definitely quite a lot wider than the front track, isn't it? Which suggests some fun balance, I imagine. Probably quite light on the nose and quite adjustable. Should we get inside the car and then you can point me through how focused it is on the driver in there? I mean, I've seen already from Goodwood, this thing is really interesting inside.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. Well, yeah, it definitely feels unique to sit in this car because of that seating position. Anthony, I can really feel my feet are quite a lot higher than they'd be, even in some Porsche models. I feel, dare I say it, like I'm in a single-seater, which is really exciting. The interior as well feels quite spacious as well. It's loads of room.
Yeah, I mean, I did work a lot on the size of the car, on the package, and the idea was really to find this perfect balance between having like a car that is not too long, not too big. It's still a very small GT. It's 4.25 meters, so it's about the size of Alpine A110. But the fact again that it's electric, like basically the technology allows you to really have a big empty space. And inside, you know, we worked on all the modern, let's say, ergonomics. So you have space for your head. You have all the angle of visibility are there, and in the end, yeah, we have even I was surprised, but how spacious you would get in such a small package.
Yeah, it's really unique. I mean, I cannot stress how, firstly, being sat on the floor of the car in an electric car is quite an unusual experience because you're always aware that there is a slab of battery underneath you. So that's really unique. It feels like a traditional sports car, and then having my feet elevated, you just feel like you want to go driving right away. I wish we could just start it or press the button and get driving because it really feels that way. But then I also spot this tiny steering wheel. I mean, this is, you know, probably not much bigger than what you get in a 7, I imagine. And then obviously the dials here are very similar to what you would see in a 7. Okay, here they're digital, but you do have that kind of setup in a conventional 7, sometimes with a carbon fiber dash as well.
Exactly, yeah. And even, you know, for instance, like the carbon fiber, this dash is actually totally flat. So that's what, again, you get this mix between the retro aspect of the car and the futurism linked to all these digital screens. And for me, it's when you do design, you also think about manufacturing, and just the overall volume, it's way easier to manufacture than many other solutions, let's say.
Yeah.
So you could imagine this having carbon fiber or wood or aluminium. Very easy to manufacture.
Yeah.
This is the concept, but the production vehicle, what's great is that we don't start from an existing chassis. And it's the first time that Caterham will really develop their own chassis. So obviously, I mean, we've been looking for some kind of new technology that basically allows you to get the best ratio between the cost and the weight. And there is a mixture, as you said, between aluminium and carbon fiber. And to be honest, this is like some sort protected with patent, etc. So even I don't know the whole story about it.
Yeah.
But it's a great way, basically, to have some kind of carbon fiber mixture, and that is really easy to produce in a larger scale.
Yeah.
And this would be unique on the market for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it feels, you know, extremely exotic. So I'm still getting that price in my head. You know, if you can really achieve that, you know, not much more than £80,000, it's going to be something. We have to look back. I mean, I'm spotting all the creature comforts, by the way. You've got Apple CarPlay. I'm sure Android Auto might go in there as well.
Yep.
I'm seeing different drive modes maybe, and of course air conditioning, which I think is definitely a necessity when you've got a roof, especially if you're putting your helmet on a track day. But that back seat there, now, you know, when I think of cars that are 2+2 or 2+1, I know this can be a +2 as well. Typically, it's a child seat. There's not much in the way of legroom, but there's plenty of shoulder room. So somebody who's wide, for sure, they might fit all right.
But you can improve the legroom by, you know, we sit now, just right now, we are seated very backward, you know.
Yeah.
If you, this seat, especially, that's why the shape of this central tunnel is very short and angled, is to be able to move this one particularly very forward. So you would get some space, actually.
Yeah. So you could theoretically have 2 adults in there, but they would be...
I mean, the way we designed the car, it's, to be honest, it's up to 12-year-old kids. So the idea is like an adult could fit for 10 minutes, for instance, for a quick... but most of the time, the principle was to get a kid in the middle so we would be able to see the road.
Yeah.
So it's not a punishment to be at the back, you know what I mean? That's what's key.
Yeah. It's more like a McLaren F1 or something with experience of 3 people, albeit with the driver on this side. Yeah, which you need. Actually, the other thing to note as well in terms of visibility, you mentioned the visibility is good, and I can really easily see the wheel arches there, and even through the mirror. Like, I know the car's not super long, so with the reversing camera, you can imagine potentially living in a city with this car and then going out to the countryside when you want to. I had a look on the stats, and I know it's a little bit wider than a Lotus Emira, but it's shorter, which is going to be handy.
Yeah, it's as I said before, it's 20 centimeters shorter than actually a Boxster or Cayman, and the Emira I think as well. And to be honest, that's my only let's say bonus when we did the concept car. Is like, we know that when you do a concept, you want to be a bit more bold, and so we are like 1.90 m wide, as you said. So the production car will be 1.85 m, 5 centimeters less. But the way I play with proportions, no, it won't change anything, It was just, as like you always want to be a bit more pushy when you do a concept. But that's only trick, I used compared to a production car. So I'm always adamant that with the car you see here, it's really the cars that we're going to produce.
That's exciting. I mean, it looks spectacular. And I'm really happy that from inside you don't lose the drama of the car, because you can see the wheel arches and just the way it feels. I cannot stop talking about the seating position. It's brilliant. I just wanted to ask one more thing, and it relates to the underside of the car now. So you mentioned the batteries are there and behind us, but the floor of the car with no, exhausts to worry about or anything like that you would normally worry about in a Caterham, although they have them down the side, and I have burned my legs on quite a few of those. It's a flat floor, isn't it? So that helps with the aero of the car, I presume.
Yeah, it's all, the natural, let's say, engineering is basically you want to position the battery as low as possible for the center of gravity, and in the end it's on a flat bed. So yeah, the whole under tray it's mainly the battery rack in some sort,
Yeah.
And obviously it helps for the flow.
Yeah. So looking at this interior, I mean, I can see how driver-centric it is. Does that carry on in the power steering as well? Because a lot of brands have switched from electric or are doing some electric, some hydraulic, like McLaren, for example. So what can we expect on this?
We need to go with electric driving assistance, because it's what everybody uses now, and unfortunately, that's gonna be it's a standard. So again, in terms of lightness and availability of the system, that's where we have to go.
Yeah. Well, we definitely know electric can have steering feel, because Porsche has proven that those steering systems can be brilliant.
And again, it's all about lightness. Because the car is so light, the assistance will be very light as well. So it's just, the matter of, and I'm sure it's me brainstorming, but I'm sure, we can basically lower a lot the assistance and maybe modulate it in a different way. So I wouldn't be worried about this aspect here.
Yeah. Well, if there's a brand that knows about steering feel, it's Caterham, because you get in and it's like you are basically touching the front tyres. So it's quite amazing, isn't it?
Maybe it's because the key thing is that at the front we won't have a luggage compartment, because the suspension will use like what is best at the moment is this double wishbone suspension. So the drawback is that they take more space, but then you get this steering feel in a perfect way. So it will help also for that.
Yeah. And there's plenty of space back there for your bags. Come on. And then the final question I wanted to ask was just, we mentioned earlier that there's plenty of space in here for a helmet. Now, I know this isn't a track car, but maybe someone will be tempted to take one on track. It certainly feels like it's going to be fun for a track drive. How are you going to be managing battery temperatures? Because one thing we found when we've driven cars at Rockingham, our track, is that cars can go very quick, electric cars, but sometimes 2 or 3 laps in, you start to see the power decrease because the battery gets hot.
Yeah, that's why actually in the next generation of battery, we use this liquid-cooled fluid. And if you see actually at the front of the car, we have a radiator. And people think, oh, why? Because it's electric. But now actually, you will use this oil being cooled and to also cool all the battery system. And this will become also a standard in the future.
Wow. Okay. Well, technically, it sounds as amazing as it looks aesthetically. Thanks so much for your time, Anthony. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see when this car is available to drive.
Yeah, me too.
You'll have to come down to Rockingham and take me round for a spin.
For sure, we'll do it. Yeah.
Cool.
So, that's an in-depth walk around of Caterham's stunning Project V, but what does it mean for the brand's future? Before heading home, we had a chat with Caterham's CEO Bob Laishley, and he told us that the Project V is intended to be produced in about 2,000 to 5,000 units per year, which, given that the 7 is made in about 750 units a year, is a big jump for this iconic British brand. Bob also emphasised that the Project V would never overshadow the Caterham 7 under his watch, as he says,
"This is the future. The 7 will carry on, and we plan to build the 7 well into the next decade. We've just taken on a lease for a new factory to build 7s with ICE engines into the next decade. So the 7's not going anywhere. This is a completely different venture, different product, in many cases a different customer. There's some crossover, some customers are indicating they want both. But I think this is a different market. It's more of a daily use car, it appeals to a wider audience. So this is the future growth strategy for the company. It's a different market.
That's good news then, especially for long-standing fans of Caterham, who were sad to not see the brand turn its 2016 C120 concept into a reality, unlike then project partner Alpine and its A110. Now, however, Caterham might finally be back on that path, one that could secure its future and relevance as a sports car maker for decades to come. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, don't forget to click the like button and of course subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. See you soon.